like to start by saying that I think we tend to forget until young people themselves remind us that for them the internet supplements or provides all the real relationships that they expect to have in real life. From friendship and loving relationships to meeting new people, sex and entertainment, advice and information. And yet, on the other hand, we've got the parents who often fear the computer. They see the internet as something that is dangerous for their children, and indeed it can be. Cyberbullying is one of the internet's dangers, and really it's our focus in TeenBoundaries. And what listening to young people very quickly reveals is that it doesn't just happen because they are online. It happens for the same reason as in the playground, for example, when someone turns on someone else or a peer group splits up. A 14-year-old girl explained to me how it can start, and she said, somebody commented fat slag on my Facebook picture because she said I looked at her funny at school. The same potential exists for things to go wrong in a friendship group online as it does anywhere else. But it's important to remember, I think, that for young people, the internet represents a tool for successful interaction. Now, fears that parents can have that the internet is something that's out of their control are very real, and often it stems from the fact that it's so pervasive. It doesn't go away, and actually it's hard to monitor, it's private, and it's difficult to be vigilant about. So talking to young people during the TeenBoundaries sessions that we run informs a lot of the advice and support that Family Lives can offer to parents. Well, what does cyberbullying mean then to the young people that we work with? As part of TeenBoundaries, we ask young people to give examples of cyberbullying that they've either experienced or they've heard about. Making horrible comments on someone's profile picture or BBM. Sending round a naked picture or video and then posting it online. Setting up a horrible page or group about somebody and getting people to like it or write comments. From these and other examples, the two they say worry them most are sexting and online pornography, and that's what I'm going to focus on this afternoon. I think we come closer to understanding young people's relationship with online pornography by getting to grips with why they view it in the first place. And I would like to share with you one reason that isn't the most obvious necessarily, but is the one I have heard most frequently given. When I ran the TeenBoundaries programme with a group of 14-year-olds a couple of weeks ago, one of the boys told me that online pornography is what you use to find out stuff about sex. It's all we've got, he said. I asked why they couldn't talk to a teacher, or a school counsellor, or their parents, and they laughed at me. They said, you don't understand. Asking a teacher is well embarrassing because they might tell somebody else or someone might see me do it. And there's no way I'd ask my dad because he'd tell me I'm too young to be thinking about it. Now, I've been really surprised how many students have said this. Seeking sexual pleasure as a reason to view online pornography is actually fairly low down on the list of motivations. Instead, it's being used by young people, boys and girls, as a source of information about sex and how it works. The TeenBoundaries programme, therefore, works really hard to tackle a lot of this, because from the young people's point of view, asking for help needs to be made less embarrassing. It needs to be destigmatised in some way. As another boy added, I mean, how else are we meant to know what to do? You know, with sex. That's why we use porn. Of course, it is essential for parents and carers to have open and, crucially, non-trivialising conversations about sex with young people. But it's not the parents' ability or inability to talk in this way about these issues that young people are worried about. It's the asking for help in the first place. And what TeenBoundaries do in the workshops we run is set up safe and non-judgmental spaces for those questions to be asked and discussions to be had free from fear of embarrassment. Now, I found what works is to establish a level ground between me as facilitator and them as participants, so there's no dynamic of authority. This is the first time we've talked about this stuff, a 13-year-old girl told me, and I think what she meant by that was it's the first chance they've had to discuss openly some of these issues, either at school or at home. It's also about a gradual approach, and not jumping in at the deep end and saying, let's talk about online pornography. We lay a lot of groundwork, starting with the origins of sexualised bullying, sexualised name-calling, before broaching online pornography, sexting and sexual assault. Now, throughout the programme, it is obviously important to say that we do also encourage students to ask for help once we've left school, whether that's within school or at home, and we do also provide them with the necessary websites and helplines. So, if young people view online pornography for information about sex, or to answer sexual curiosities, or for sexual pleasure, then they come to think that porn equals sex. It's the same as sex, it's just on the internet, one 15-year-old told me very definitely. So, the TeenBoundaries programme sees one of its key responsibilities as challenging the idea that porn accurately represents sex. And that's absolutely crucial, because how they view sex defines how they view relationships, and that comes to critically define what they expect of each other. So on that last point, one thing I've picked up on is the difference in attitude towards online pornography between boys and girls. In a recent workshop with 16-year-old girls, I asked them what they thought of online porn, and whether it was something they had been exposed to or they had sought on the internet for themselves. I don't look for it, I said, someone just sends me a link, or I see it on their phone. And that seemed to be the general consensus among the group. But worryingly, they went on to express how intimidated they were by some of the images that they had seen, and more importantly, what the boys expected of them. Nobody looks like those people in porn, one of them said, and I don't want to do any of that stuff. The same girl told me the story of her relationship with a boy from her year at school. I really liked him, she said, and I just wanted to go out and do normal stuff, like go to the cinema or whatever. But very quickly, he began to pressure her into having sex. I knew he was watching porn because he told me, and I'd seen it on his phone. I didn't like it was gross, but he wanted me to do all that stuff with him. She also said that she felt great insecurity, and as if she wasn't good enough, because she didn't have the same body as the women in the videos that she had seen. Now, this is a story I have heard lots of times and in lots of schools, and that's the problem. Girls exposed to online pornography are comparing themselves to a complete misrepresentation of what a woman is and the role she plays in sex. But this is not just a self-esteem issue. Attitudes towards relationships are skewed to focus only on sex. Getting to know each other or spending time together is unimportant, but that's what this girl and so many others that I have worked with have told me that they want. And so the pornography that these young people experience within a relationship empties sex of any emotional content. It just becomes something that is expected to happen. And from the boys' side, well, during our workshops, I ask boys to make a list of expectations that they have of a potential girlfriend. And the following answers from a group of 16-year-olds are fairly typical. Big tits, good bum, long legs, long hair, tanned. I suggested having something in common might be important, or enjoying spending time together. I could say personality, one of them said, but to be honest, if she doesn't have a good body, I'm not going to get with her. Now, it's not news, of course, that watching online pornography encourages the objectification of women, but actually, as these boys pointed out to me, it leaves no room for any alternative perspective. And so it's not just sex that becomes distorted by porn, but also what fundamentally constitutes being attractive. Boys are also forced to have a list of expectations of themselves. Again, in this class, they said, big pecs, six-pack, muscles, stubble, tan. Now, TeenBoundaries tackles these attitudes by encouraging students to consider the differences between what they see in online pornography and what they desire or have known in a real relationship. And it's here, I think, that we can see the link to the rise in sexting. When I ask a young person why they send a sexual image or video of themselves to somebody else, the answer is nearly always because I wanted him or her to like me. And I think that's really telling. It exposes one of the effects of the wallpaper of sexualised images, including porn, that surrounds young people. That is, when they are forced to make constant comparisons between themselves and the images they see, it's their self-esteem that takes the hit. And what can grow out of that lack of self-confidence is an overwhelming need to be liked. And by that, they mean being seen as sexually attractive. And so they prove it in some way by sending a sext. The TeenBoundaries programme works very hard to tackle some of those ideas about what constitutes being attractive and encourages the definition beyond merely physical appearance. Now that would be great if that was all there is to it, but parents' fears that their children's lives can spiral out of control on the internet are spot on. One 14-year-old girl told me what happened to her. I sent some naked photos to this boy I liked. He didn't force me to do it, I wanted to. He said he liked them, so I sent him more. He sent them on to his mate because he wanted to show off how fit I was. Soon, everyone at school had that photo on their phone, and then someone put it on Facebook. And that's when things got really bad. She went on to explain that she started to receive abusive and threatening messages as a result of that picture. People were calling me ugly and saying I was a slag. Other people just kept asking me for sex. I honestly didn't know what to do, she told me. I was so embarrassed, I thought I'd never get out of that situation. Through TeenBoundaries, we warn young people about the potential damaging repercussions of pressing send, many of which they haven't even anticipated, as well as critically equip them with the behavioural and practical skills necessary to deal if anything does go wrong. And here's the important bit. The TeenBoundaries programme doesn't aim to stop or restrict young people from using the internet or the mobile phones, but it teaches them how to do so safely and appropriately. I had no idea so many people could see a picture if it goes viral, one girl told me in a class the other day when discussing what would happen if a sext was made public on the internet. I hate the idea of teachers or my parents being able to see it, and I never even thought about sex offenders being able to search for it either. The discussions that we facilitate in class often give young people the first chance that they've had to consider the aftermath of a decision to send a sext. I like being able to talk to you, one girl told me. Most people just called me stupid and said I shouldn't have done it, but you're the first person to encourage me to think about why not. In our workshops, we talk about the legal implications of sexting, as well as look at any recent press stories about which the young people tend to have lots of questions. But there is one issue that I think seems to have real impact, and that's because, in the words of a 15-year-old boy, it makes you realise sexting is really serious. You can't just press send without thinking about what could happen. And that is, if a video or a photo gets uploaded to the internet, on Facebook, on Bebo, any social networking site, then it becomes permanent. During our session on sexting, we ask young people to scrunch up a piece of paper into a ball without ripping it. We then ask them to try and unfold it, to smooth it out, to get rid of the creases in the paper. And they all point out, of course, that those creases cannot be removed. We use this exercise as a way to illustrate the emotional scars that cyberbullying can leave, but also the tangible scars, the photos, the videos that are left on the internet, which won't go away. As one girl reflected, no one's ever told us about how it could affect us later on. It's not just about being a teenager. What happens if someone searches my name and they want to give me a job? It's just not worth it. So, let's return then to that question of helping parents to reclaim the computer. And I've learned that, to a certain extent, it's the young people themselves who have to do the reclaiming by using the internet responsibly, safely, and being equipped with the skills necessary to cope if anything does go wrong. And that's what TeenBoundaries encourages. I've run workshops with boys who have begun by seeing nothing wrong with watching online pornography and have ended by saying, that's not something I want in my relationship. Girls have finished workshops by declaring, I'm not going to send a naked picture, it doesn't make my relationship better, being with someone is about a lot more than sex. This is the kind of difference that TeenBoundaries can and does make. And again, it would be great if that were all there is to it. But I do have to say, this is something which cannot be facilitated and then never revisited by the school or at home. And in terms of the support Family Lives offers parents, there is a lot to be learned from the young people themselves that's brought out by TeenBoundaries. Work around these issues must be consistent and sensitive to the fact that they are ongoing and often inescapable for young people. Now, I'm definitely not saying that this is a generation lost to a cyber world. I have been so encouraged by how willing young people are to reassess their own preconceptions in their own terms. It's just something more of them need the opportunity to do. Thank you very much.